Once upon a time, there was a young woman named Rose who had a warm heart and a joyful spirit. She was a mother to 2 little children, ages 3 and 1, and a devoted wife to her beloved husband, David. Rose and David shared a bond filled with love, laughter, and a deep companionship that made every day feel like a blessing. One morning, as David prepared to leave for work, he held Rose close, wrapping her in a warm hug. He kissed her tenderly and told her he would be home early. That day was their wedding anniversary, and David had made plans to spoil her, promising a special evening together. Rose felt her heart swell with happiness as he left, already imagining the night they would share. But as the day wore on, Rose grew restless. She couldn't shake off a strange feeling of unease. Just as she was trying to busy herself with chores, a knock came at the door. Rose's heart skipped a beat as she opened it, finding 2 somber-looking officers standing there. "Good afternoon, ma'am. Are you Mrs. David?" one of them asked. "Yes, I am," Rose replied. The woman officer gently took Rose's hand and led her to the sofa. "Ma'am, you might want to sit down. We have difficult news to share," she said softly. Fear gripped Rose's heart, and she struggled to keep her voice calm. "Did something happen?" she asked, barely able to breathe. The woman took a deep breath, her voice heavy with sadness. "Your husband, ma'am. He was shot and killed." The words hit Rose like a blow, and her whole world crumbled. She let out a heart-wrenching scream before collapsing, the shock overtaking her completely. Hours later, Rose awoke in the hospital with a throbbing headache and a hollow ache in her chest. As her eyes adjusted to the room, she saw her mother-in-law standing beside her, holding Rose's 2 little children close. They didn't understand what was happening, but her mother-in-law's tears spoke the truth Rose had hoped was just a nightmare. "It's true," Rose's voice cracked as she asked, and when her mother-in-law nodded, Rose screamed. The reality of her loss was too overwhelming to bear. She pulled off her wig and flung it aside, tears streaming down her face. "So my husband is gone. I'm a widow now," she cried. Her mind raced, filled with questions and memories. How can this be? He was full of life this morning. He hugged me and promised we'd celebrate tonight. She sobbed, remembering every small joy David had brought into her life. Who would fix her car now when it broke down? Who would she laugh with? Who would hold her in the night and make her feel safe? Her children tugged at her sleeve, their little eyes wide with confusion. "Mummy, what's wrong?" they asked. Rose looked at their innocent faces and couldn't bear to break their little hearts. Daddy had to go on a trip," she stammered, forcing a smile for their sake. But the weight of the truth was too heavy, and she crumbled into sobs once more. She was later taken to identify David's body, and as she saw him lying there, peaceful but cold, she could hardly recognize the strong, vibrant man she had loved. The sight of him, stained in blood, burned into her mind, haunting her every thought. The image of David lying there, lifeless, tormented Rose every time she closed her eyes. The sight of him, so peaceful yet so cold, haunted her thoughts. She wished she had never seen him that way. The blood, the stillness, the empty look on his face. It felt like a nightmare she couldn't escape. Why would anyone kill my husband? She kept asking herself over and over. The question echoed in her mind, but there were no answers, only emptiness. Nothing made sense. Why him? Why now? He didn't deserve this. The police had no leads, no clues, and even if they did, it didn't matter to Rose. It wouldn't bring David back. It wouldn't bring back the laughter, the love, the warmth he had given her. It wouldn't fill the empty space in her heart. David and Rose had shared a love so deep, so strong. They had their flaws, but they were perfect for each other. He was her rock, her safe place, her everything. Now she had to navigate this cold, cruel world without him. The pain of living without him felt unbearable, like a heavy weight on her chest. Everything seemed like a dream. Rose kept expecting David to walk through the door and tell her it was all a lie, that he wasn't the one lying lifeless in the hospital, that it was some mistake, some twisted version of reality. When Rose returned home with the children, their little faces broke her heart. They didn't understand what had happened. They didn't know why Daddy wasn't there. They kept asking her when he would be home. Their innocent, hopeful questions felt like daggers to her heart. Rose couldn't bear to tell them the truth. She couldn't say the words, "Daddy is gone forever," not yet. Not when their little hearts were so fragile. After she had tucked the children into bed, Rose went to their bedroom. The room was full of reminders of David, his clothes hanging in the closet, his shoes by the door, the books he loved scattered around. She walked over to his side of the bed, where he would normally lie. She could almost hear him teasing her to come to bed, laughing when she said she was too busy. Now the bed was cold, and the space beside her felt empty. She picked up his shirt, held it to her face, and sniffed it. It smelled like him, comforting, familiar, and yet now forever out of reach. Rose collapsed onto the bed and broke down. She wept uncontrollably, her tears soaking the pillow. How could she move on without him? How could she continue without the man who had been her everything? Rose didn't know when she fell asleep, but the loud banging on the door woke her up suddenly. Her head hurt, and her heart was pounding as she tried to sit up. Who could it be? She wondered quietly. She slowly got up and went to the door, feeling confused. When she opened it, she saw her in-laws standing there, looking serious and worried. Without saying a word, they pushed past her and came into the house. "Rose," her brother-in-law said, "we need to talk." Rose couldn't think clearly. The sadness inside her was so strong she could hardly understand what was going on. Rose's heart shattered when her in-laws came to her with devastating news. They told her she had to leave the house she had built with her husband, David. Confused and desperate, Rose asked them why, but they didn't answer. They simply said that she had only a few days to leave the house. "Go where?" Rose asked, her voice trembling with fear. "That's not our problem," they answered coldly. Without saying another word, they left, leaving Rose standing there, feeling lost. She quickly went to her family, hoping they would help her. When she got there, they only told her sorry, nothing more. Because Rose was warned not to get married to David in the past. When Rose went to the house to gather a few things, her in-laws threw her out. They had taken everything, David's clothes, his shoes, and all his belongings. Not one thing was left behind for her. The pain in her chest was unbearable. She felt like her whole world had been taken away from her. The only thing that kept her going was the thought of her children, still with her, still needing her love and care. The funeral was no better. Her in-laws, bitter and angry, blamed Rose for David's death, even though they knew he had been shot and killed. They tried to force her into cruel widow's customs, but Rose's friend, Barrister Claire, wouldn't let them. She had travelled with Rose and stayed by her side. She even threatened to take legal action if they tried to hurt Rose or make her do something cruel. Claire brought soldiers with her to make sure Rose was safe during the funeral. It was the hardest day of Rose's life. She stood with her mother and Claire, holding on to them as David's coffin was lowered into the ground. Rose felt like she might fall into the grave with him. The loss was too much to bear, and her children didn't understand what was going on. When her son Jared was asked to throw some dirt on the coffin, he didn't know what to do. Rose felt her heart break even more, watching her innocent child try to understand the pain that was so hard to explain. After the funeral, Rose's in-laws didn't stop. They tried to take her children away from her, even though she was the only parent they had left. But Barrister Claire wasn't going to let that happen. She stood up for Rose in court, arguing that Rose was the only one who could take care of her children, and that it would be wrong to separate them. Her in-laws accused Rose of not being able to provide for her children. They said she didn't have a job. Rose felt hurt and embarrassed. She had worked hard to get a master's degree, and she had always planned to get a job after their last child was born. But now, with David gone, she didn't know how to provide for her children. David had been the one providing for them all, but the one thing he hadn't done was make a will. Rose wished he had, because if he had, things would be different. Without a will, his family came in and took everything: his wealth, his investments, and his property. Rose didn't know how to fight back at first. She was too deep in her grief to think clearly. Now, though, they wanted to take her children, the only piece of David she still had. In court, Rose broke down in tears. She told the judge that her children were all she had left, and taking them away from her would be like taking her life. She explained how her in-laws had already taken everything from her, and now they wanted her children too. She promised the judge that she would find a job, even though the thought of it scared her. She had always stayed home with her children, but now she had no choice but to learn how to support them. The judge listened carefully and ruled in Rose's favor. But her in-laws didn't stop. They tried to kidnap Rose's children, but Rose's mother had already made plans to keep them safe. The in-laws continued to threaten Rose, but she was done being afraid. She had no choice but to fight for her children, no matter what. Rose had always tried to keep a good relationship with her in-laws when David was alive, but now she saw their true nature. They had never cared for her, and they certainly didn't care about her children. She had been heartbroken, hoping that one day things might change, but now she knew that she had to be strong if she wanted to survive. It hurt Rose deeply to think that David had left her to fight this battle alone. If only he had written a will, everything would have been different. But now she had to stand up for herself and her children. Her in-laws even took her car. They seized the keys and sold it, leaving her without transportation. After everything settled down, Rose moved away from her in-laws. She didn't have any other choice. Her family wasn't wealthy, and her mother, who was also a widow, helped take care of her children while Rose worked. All the money Rose had saved was used up quickly, paying for a new home and other necessities. Rose secured a teaching job, the fastest one she could find, to support her children after her husband's sudden death. Though she had other skills, tailoring, hairdressing, and catering, she knew that teaching would provide a steady income. But even then, life was hard. Every day she balanced her job with extra lessons for her children, hoping to keep them on track in school. They had already lost so much, and Rose wasn't about to let them fall behind. The school she worked for, however, became more and more suffocating. The owner didn't seem to care that teachers needed rest or personal time. It was like working for him had no end. After 2 years, Rose made a difficult decision. She left. It was a hard choice, but she knew she couldn't keep going that way. With the little money she had saved, she bought a sewing machine and catering supplies. She worked hard, making clothes, cooking meals, and doing hair whenever she could. It was exhausting, but Rose was determined. Her children had already lost their father. The last thing she wanted was for them to lose their sense of stability. Even so, her in-laws didn't make things easier. They kept trying to contact her from different phone numbers after she blocked them, but Rose didn't care anymore. She wasn't scared of them. She had given birth to her children, and they were hers to protect. No one, not even her in-laws, was going to take them from her. Then one day, Rose got a call that seemed like a lifeline. A company offered her a catering contract, and they were willing to pay well. She couldn't believe her luck. She had been working so hard to make ends meet, and this could finally be her big break. She left her children with her mother and set off for the company, hoping this would be the opportunity she had been waiting for. But when she arrived at the company, she was greeted with a shocking proposition. The CEO, a man who knew she was a widow with children, made it clear that the only way she would get the contract was if she slept with him. Rose was stunned. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. This was the man who could help her, who could give her the financial support she so desperately needed, and yet he wanted to use her pain against her. She begged him, telling him about her children, how they were hungry, how they had nothing. But the CEO just laughed. He told her to do the needful if she wanted the job. Rose was crushed. She had never slept with a man to gain anything, and even though she was desperate, this was something she could never do. Leaving his office, her heart shattered, Rose sat on the cold pavement outside and cried. She felt like the world had turned its back on her. She called her friend Jay, telling him what had happened. He couldn't believe it. He promised to call the CEO and try to fix things. But when he called Rose back, all he could say was that the CEO was not sorry. He had made it clear that it was his company and he could do whatever he wanted. Rose sat there, lost in her grief, tears streaming down her face. She was so tired of fighting, tired of struggling, and tired of the world that seemed to only offer her pain. People walked by, but no one stopped to ask if she was okay. They all had their own problems. Just as she was beginning to feel like there was no hope left, a man approached her. He had been watching her cry from a distance. He asked her what was wrong, and Rose, surprised that anyone cared, told him everything. He listened quietly, offering her a bottle of water when he noticed she had lost her voice from crying. Then, without hesitation, he asked for her bank account number. Rose gave it to him, too stunned to say no. Minutes later, he transferred 500,000 naira into her account. Rose, overwhelmed with gratitude, fell to her knees and thanked him. He told her not to embarrass him, that it was fine. The man introduced himself as Gerald, and Rose introduced herself as Jennifer. She didn't mention that she was a widow with children, not wanting to share too much. But Gerald, seeing her need, offered her a job. He had events where he needed someone to cater, and he also wanted her to cook for him. He preferred homemade meals to eating out, and he didn't want to cook anymore. Rose hesitated, unsure of the arrangement. She didn't want to risk being taken advantage of, but Gerald assured her that he just wanted to help. He said she wouldn't have to live with him. She would only come twice a week, or whenever necessary to cook. He offered to provide the money for the ingredients, and he even said she would have a key to his apartment so she wouldn't have to worry about him being home when she arrived. He offered her 300,000 naira a month, a tempting offer for someone in her position. But Rose was still unsure. She couldn't shake the fear of what could go wrong. The world felt dangerous, and she wasn't ready to trust anyone again. After thanking him, she left, but her mind was racing. She went to the market to buy food and snacks for her children, then returned home to tell her mother everything. She told her about the money she had received and the job offer. Her mother, though worried, encouraged her to take the job. She said she would pray for her. But Rose, still uncertain, wasn't convinced. Rose struggled with the decision, but after much thought, she finally took the job. It wasn't an easy choice, and deep down she had so many doubts. She wasn't sure what to expect, and her fears made her second-guess herself. But with the kids to take care of, she had to take the opportunity. A job was a job, and this one could bring in the kind of money she needed. When she called Gerald to tell him she'd accepted, his excitement made her even more uneasy. His voice was so full of energy that it felt almost overwhelming. The more he sounded happy, the more Rose's worries grew. What if this was all a trap? What if this job turned out to be more trouble than it was worth? The next day, Rose asked her brother to accompany her. She was afraid to go alone, afraid of the unknown. Gerald gave her the address to his house, and the two of them made their way there. When they arrived, Rose couldn't help but admire the house. It was beautiful, elegant in a way she had never experienced before. It made her heart ache for the life she had once dreamed of with her late husband. Gerald handed her a key to the house and explained the arrangement. She nodded, but inside she was still unsure. Afterward, she went to the market, bought ingredients, and returned to start preparing the meals. As she worked, she felt a strange mixture of excitement and fear, hope that this job would be a turning point and dread of what might come next. When she returned, her brother had already left, and Rose was alone. But soon, she wasn't the only one in the house. A woman named Mabel walked in, her presence so sudden and forceful that it took Rose by surprise. "Who are you?" Mabel demanded, eyeing Rose with suspicion. "What are you doing, cooking in my boyfriend's kitchen?" Rose blinked in surprise. Mabel's tone was harsh, and for a moment, Rose wondered if she had walked into something more complicated than she had anticipated. "I'm the new chef," Rose explained, trying to keep her voice calm. Mabel scoffed. "Chef? I didn't know he hired a chef. Why didn't he tell me about you?" She crossed her arms. "Do you think you can just come in here and take what's mine?" Rose tried to stay composed, though Mabel's accusations scared her. "I'm just doing my job," she said, turning back to the food she was preparing. Mabel didn't back down. "Chef indeed. Do you think you're going to come in here and take over everything? You don't belong here." Rose ignored Mabel and kept cooking, hoping she would leave, but Mabel wasn't done. "Are you ignoring me?" she shouted. Then she called Gerald, still yelling into the phone. "Why didn't you tell me you hired a chef? You should have talked to me first." Rose could hear Mabel shouting on the phone. It made her feel uncomfortable, but she kept working. A few minutes later, her phone rang. It was Gerald. "Are you still at the house?" Gerald asked. "Yes," Rose said, "but Mabel is upset." "Stay there. I'll be home soon," Gerald said. "I need to handle this." Rose finished cooking and cleaned the kitchen while she waited. She wasn't sure what was going to happen, but she stayed calm. Finally, Gerald came back home. Mabel was right behind him, still angry. "What's going on here?" Gerald asked, looking at Mabel and Rose. Mabel started yelling right away. "How could you hire a chef without asking me first? You can't just bring someone into our home without talking to me." Gerald didn't raise his voice, but he stood his ground. He demanded, seeing her dragging Rose's children away, trying to force them out. "Leave those children alone right now," Gerald roared, but Mabel ignored him, continuing to push the children out. Gerald stepped forward, his voice rising. "Are you crazy? Are you high? Are you mad?" Mabel hissed, grabbed her handbag and stormed out, slamming the door behind her. Gerald turned to Rose's children, his expression softening. He pulled them into a hug. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry you had to see that." Then he led them to the living room, switched on the TV, and told them to watch cartoons and relax. A few minutes later, Gerald's phone rang. It was his mother calling, as usual. He'd left the phone on speaker, and Rose overheard their conversation. "What kind of nonsense is this?" his mother demanded. Gerald sounded shocked. "What nonsense, Mum?" he asked. "How can you get involved with a woman who has 2 children and abandon Mabel, who is single?" his mother asked, her voice full of anger. Gerald excused himself, took the phone off speaker, and went to his bedroom. Rose could hear him shouting, but couldn't make out what he was saying. An hour later, Gerald came back, still upset. He left for a while and returned shortly. When he came back, he called Mabel, put the phone back on speaker, and began arguing with her. "Why did you paint me in such a bad light to my mother?" Gerald demanded. "Why would you tell her that I'm involved with a woman who's just a widow with 2 children? And what's wrong if I'm taking care of her kids?" Mabel responded coldly, "You think you can just discard me after I supported you for 2 years?" Gerald's voice was loud and angry. "How did you support me? I already had everything before I met you. I had my company, I built this house, and I had everything I needed. So how did you support me?" Mabel stood tall and looked at him with cold eyes. "I found you a job, I got you a place to live, and I bought you a car," she said. "I helped you become the man you are today. How didn't I support you?" Gerald was getting madder. "What kind of support is that? You don't cook, you don't clean, and you didn't even give me respect. I respected everything you said. What kind of support do you think you gave?" Mabel was getting frustrated too. "I don't care anymore, Gerald. You've made a big mistake. You poisoned your mother's mind against me. You filled her head with lies about me. And now you want me to just sit back and accept it? No way." Gerald was shocked and angry. "You're selfish, Mabel. I tried to help you, but you can't see how your actions are ruining everything. You don't understand." Mabel was cold. "Fine, if you want it this way, then let my Rose marry you. What do I care now?" She ended the call before Gerald could say anything. The phone clicked loudly, and Gerald stood there, staring at it, his mind racing. He was shocked. The next morning, Gerald's mother showed up at his house with a serious look on her face. She walked into the living room, sat down, and waited for him to come out of his room. When Gerald came out, he could feel the tension in the air. He knew something was wrong. "Gerald," she began in a firm voice, "I will not allow you to get involved with a widow, a single mother, and someone who has such a past." She looked at him with disappointment. "People are saying she killed her own husband. How can you bring shame to this family like this?" Gerald was shocked. "Mum," he said, trying to keep his voice calm, "I don't know who told you that, but it's not true. Rose didn't do anything like that. She loved her husband, and his death was an accident. And besides, we're not even dating. I'm just helping her because I see she's struggling. Her kids need support." His mother shook her head. "People are talking, Gerald. They say she's dangerous, that she's using her children to gain sympathy. You have so much potential. You don't need this." Gerald's patience was wearing thin. "Mum, I don't care what people say. I know Rose, and I know she's a good person. Her husband's death was tragic, but it was not her fault. She's just a mother trying to raise her kids alone. You should see how hard she works, how she cares for them. I felt I had to help because, well, it's what Dad would have done." His mother looked surprised at his words. "But why? Why are you so drawn to helping her?" "Mom," Gerald said, his voice softer now, "when I look at her children, I see myself and my sister when we were kids. I remember how you and Dad worked so hard for us, and I can't just ignore someone who needs help. Rose has no family around, no one to support her. She's not asking for anything. I'm just trying to be kind." She looked at him thoughtfully. "Gerald, kindness is one thing, but you have to be careful. People can take advantage. Mom, Rose isn't like that. She's proud. She doesn't even want my help most of the time, Gerald replied. Honestly, I didn't want this to become such a big deal. I never planned for it to look like anything more. Rose is just a friend. His mother sat quietly, thinking over his words. Finally, she spoke. You know, I just want the best for you. But Gerald, be careful. Your kindness shouldn't come at the cost of your future. Don't get too involved in a situation you can't control. I understand, Mom, Gerald said, his voice calmer. But I don't want to turn my back on her just because people are gossiping. I won't give in to rumors. Rose deserves a chance. Her kids deserve a chance. For a moment, there was silence between them. His mother sighed and placed her hand on his shoulder. All right, Gerald. I may not fully understand it, but I trust you know what you're doing. Just be cautious. As she stood up to leave, Gerald felt a sense of relief, but he also knew this wasn't the end. His mother would still have her doubts, and people would still talk, but he felt more determined than ever to do the right thing, no matter what anyone else thought. A year later, Gerald and Rose's bond had grown even stronger, and they had started secretly dating. Gerald found joy in spending time with her and her children, and he saw a future with them. After a lot of thought, he finally decided it was time to introduce Rose to his mother officially. He hoped that, after seeing how happy he was, his mother would accept Rose and understand his feelings. One sunny afternoon, Gerald took Rose by the hand and led her to his mother's house. Rose felt nervous but hopeful, wanting so much for his mother to accept her and her children. But as soon as they arrived and Gerald introduced Rose, his mother's expression changed. Her smile faded, replaced by a look of disapproval. No, Gerald, his mother said firmly, I will not allow this. My son will not marry a young widow with 2 children. Gerald's face fell, and Rose felt a lump in her throat as she tried to stay strong. His mother continued, her voice growing sharper. I only know one woman who deserves you, Gerald, and that's Mabel. She's single, has no children, and she's the one I want you to marry. Gerald shook his head, trying to reason with his mother. Mom, this isn't about who you want. I love Rose. She makes me happy, and her children are wonderful. Why can't you see that? His mother crossed her arms, her expression unchanging. I don't care, Gerald. You're my only son, and I want the best for you. This is not the life I envisioned for you. Gerald took a deep breath, searching for the right words. Mum, he said softly, you're a widow too. You raised me and my sister on your own. Why can't you have some understanding for Rose and what she's been through? His mother's face hardened. That's different. I didn't go looking for sympathy. I built myself up and stayed strong. You can't compare me to her. Mum, Rose is strong too, Gerald replied. She's doing everything she can to give her kids a good life. All she's ever wanted is to stand on her own 2 feet, just like you. But his mother shook her head, unwilling to listen. Gerald, my mind is made up. If you insist on this, then you're making a choice to turn away from your family. I will not give my blessing for you to be with her. Rose, hurt and fighting back tears, gently touched Gerald's arm. Maybe we should go, she whispered. Reluctantly, Gerald nodded. He looked back at his mother one last time, hoping she might change her mind. But her expression remained cold, her arms still crossed. As they left, Gerald felt a mix of sadness and anger. He was torn between the love he had for Rose and his mother's wishes. But in his heart, he knew he couldn't turn his back on Rose. She had become too important to him, and he couldn't imagine his life without her and her children. Walking back to the car, Gerald took Rose's hand. No matter what, I'm here for you, he said, trying to reassure her. Rose gave a small, grateful smile, though her heart was heavy. A few months went by, and Gerald noticed that Rose seemed troubled at times, as if there was something still weighing on her. One evening, as they sat together, he finally asked, Rose, have you ever found out who killed your husband? Rose sighed, her face clouded with pain. No, Gerald. I've been trying, but I haven't had any luck. It's like they vanished into thin air. I just want answers for myself and for my children. Gerald could see the sadness in her eyes, and it hurt him to see her like this. He reached out and took her hand. Don't worry, I'll help you, he said. I'll get someone who knows what they're doing to find out what happened. You don't have to go through this alone. Rose's eyes widened with surprise. Gerald, you don't have to do that. I can manage. But Gerald was determined. I want to help, Rose. I care about you, and I want to make sure you and your kids have peace of mind. True to his word, Gerald hired a top investigator, someone who was known for solving cases no one else could. The investigator worked tirelessly, gathering information and following leads. Months went by, but finally the breakthrough came. The investigator discovered the truth. The person responsible for Rose's husband's death was none other than her husband's younger brother. He had killed his older brother in a brutal plot to take over his property and business. Rose was devastated. She had never suspected her brother-in-law could be capable of such a horrible crime. The shock of learning the truth hit her hard, but at least now she had the answers she had been searching for. The police arrested him, and after a long trial, he was sentenced to life in prison for the murder of his older brother. After Rose's husband's younger brother was sentenced to life imprisonment, the dark chapter of her life slowly began to close. The truth had come out, and justice was served. With her husband's killer behind bars, the court also decided that all of her late husband's properties would be handed over to her and her children. It was a bittersweet victory, a reminder of the pain that had come with losing her husband, but it was also a sign that she could now build a better life for herself and her children, without the constant fear and uncertainty. The properties included the family home, which was a large, beautiful house that Rose had always loved, as well as several pieces of land and a business that her husband had worked hard to build. With everything now legally in her name, Rose felt a weight lift off her shoulders. One day, Gerald was relaxing at home when his phone rang. He didn't know the number, but he answered it. "Stay away from Mabel, the mother of my 6 children," a cold voice said before hanging up. Gerald felt confused. 6 children, he whispered, not understanding what the call meant. He had no idea who it was or why they said that. His mind raced as he thought about it. He quickly called Mabel. "Mabel, someone just called me. They said you have 6 children. What's going on?" Mabel sounded nervous when she answered. "Gerald, I don't know who called you, but it's not true. I don't have 6 children. Please don't listen to them." But Gerald wasn't convinced. He pressed further. "Then why would they say that? Why didn't you tell me about this? What's going on, Mabel?" Mabel hesitated, trying to find the right words. "I swear, Gerald, I don't know who that was. Maybe it's a mistake, a misunderstanding. Please, you've got to trust me." But just as Gerald was about to respond, his phone buzzed again. This time, it was his mother calling. He answered quickly, trying to make sense of everything that was happening. There was silence for a moment, then his mother spoke, sounding worried. "Gerald, I got a strange call. Someone said Mabel is the mother of his children. How true is this?" Gerald felt a wave of confusion. "I don't know, Mum. Someone called me and said the same thing." There was a brief silence on the other end before his mother spoke, her voice filled with regret. "Gerald, I've been wrong. I didn't believe you when you told me about Mabel. I didn't trust you, but now I see I should have." Gerald took a deep breath. "Mum, what are you saying?" "I should have listened to you," she continued, sounding genuinely sorry. "I didn't accept Rose, and I didn't support you the way I should have. I'm sorry for everything I said. I was wrong." Gerald exhaled, his mind still racing. "It's okay, Mum. I just don't know what to believe anymore. I thought I knew Mabel, but now everything feels wrong." His mother's tone softened. "I was wrong, Gerald. I just wanted the best for you. I'm sorry." He nodded, even though she couldn't see him. "I will be careful, Mum. Thanks for telling me the truth." After hanging up, Gerald sat back, feeling the weight of everything sink in. The strange call, his mother's apology, and Mabel's hidden secrets. All of it was too much for him to understand. The woman he thought he knew had kept so much from him, and now he didn't know what to believe anymore. A few months later, Gerald and Rose's relationship grew stronger despite all the challenges. They decided to take a bold step forward, leaving behind the drama and confusion of the past. They got married in a small, intimate ceremony with close friends and family, a day filled with love, laughter, and new beginnings. After the wedding, they made the decision to start fresh abroad. They relocated to a new country, eager to build a peaceful life together, away from the complications of their past. The move was a new chapter, filled with hope and excitement for what the future would hold. Dear viewers, What lessons did you take away from this dramatic tale? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed the story, give us a thumbs up, share it with friends, and hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss out on our latest updates. Thanks for watching and stay blessed.